Hey, this is Godwin Kelly along with Ken Willis. We're inside the Daytona 500 experience for this week's Motormouths podcast.
It's Rolex week.
Rolex,
the 24 hours
Rolex
of Daytona.
24 at Daytona, and the A is capitalized. So that's something to look forward to, the race on the 3.56 mile road course. Right.
Over the banks, through the snow, around, might be snow, through the infield course, the horseshoes. It's a totally different animal than what we see the rest of speed weeks, because one thing I like about the Rolex is that you get the really fast cars, which in the Rolex are the Daytona prototypes, but then you get the other class of cars, the Grand Touring cars, the GT class, which are Porsches and I guess some Mustangs, Corvettes, that sort of car. And they're very, very fast cars, but considerably slower than the prototypes. So it's so much fun to watch the differential in speed when these fast cars are weaving through the traffic. And that's one of the big hazards that separates this race from the Le Mans race. It's a shorter track than Le Mans. It's a much higher car count than Le Mans. So therefore the traffic is what these international sports car guys, when they come here to run this race, their biggest obstacle is literally obstacles. It's traffic. Now,
if you're not going to be here for the race and you're going to watch it on TV, you've got to watch the opening lap. The race starts at 3:30. I think it's on Fox, right? Yes. The first lap is just a lot of fun. It's just incredibly fun because these cars are putting on a show, you know. And so usually the first hour or so, everybody's a little dicey, a little edgy. The cars are a little nervous, you know. And then it settles down into...
much like the rest of us.
Right.
Jimmie Johnson's in this year's race. There's been some Cup champs in this race for over the last 6-8 years, quite a few. He's pretty much the only one this year.
Yeah.
But he's in a car that could win it. He's in a car that they finished second last year. They finished second a couple of years before that, I believe.
Yes, they did.
So he's in a car that was a runner-up car last year with basically the same team. So Jimmie Johnson, 3-time Cup champ, could very well find himself in victory lane after the Rolex 24.
Wouldn't that be wild?
Well, it'll be a little, pretty much cement his reputation as a great racer right now.
All right, and then what about stock cars?
What about stock cars?
Well, there's a lot of little newsy things out there right now.
You want to know the most interesting thing I heard over the last couple of days?
What would that be, Mr. Willis?
You know that whole deal going on with Richard Petty merging in with the old Gillette Evernham team, which was Ray Evernham Motorsports. Well, Ray's out of the picture now, so he merged with George Gillette.
Right.
And then Gillette people basically took over. Ray's out of the picture, but it was still called Gillette Evernham Motorsports. Richard Petty Racing, Petty Enterprises, merged in with them. Getting all this?
I'm getting dizzy.
And then now we hear news that the team will be known as Richard Petty Motorsports. Although the Gillette people are still running the show. It's Petty's name on paper, but he's not calling any shots. I can almost guarantee he's not spending any of his own money on it.
So he'll
be a front man. He'll be an icon. His silhouette with the hat, mustache, little glasses will be right there.
He's a pitch man.
He's a pitch man. Much like you see celebrity names used a lot on things. Roy Rogers Restaurant. I didn't never see Roy. Roy never gave me a burger or curly fries.
Yeah.
So I don't think Richard Petty will be on the pit box.
Kenny Rogers Chicken.
Now I have seen him deep frying some thighs.
Oh, okay.
And I've seen him cook chicken too. but like Richard, I don't even know what that means. But, so anyway, that to me was very interesting that they, for marketing purposes entirely, I assume, they brought in the Richard Petty name. Which, good and bad news here. Obviously, it still has cachet in motorsports. The name Richard Petty, everybody knows it. So it helps them from that standpoint. But at the same time, over the last decade or more, that name is not necessarily synonymous with winning NASCAR efforts.
Well, I think the stroke of genius is, instead of Petty Enterprises, it's Richard Petty Motorsports.
Right.
And Richard Petty is a brand. I mean, that's a guy that's on par with Dale Earnhardt in his own right with the 7 championships. So I think that's going to work out, actually.
Yeah, I think it's certainly less wieldy and a lot flashier than Gillette Evernham Motorsports. It's a better fit, and the 43 car will be with Reed Sorensen. It'll look just like it's looked forever, basically color scheme wise. So maybe it'll start running up front again. Maybe not. We'll see.
another merger deal.
A merger deal?
Yeah, you got your Hall of Fame racing.
Hall of Fame racing.
Merging into Yates racing.
With Yates racing.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so now you got your Bobby Labonte, who's going to be running for Hall of Fame racing, which is part of Yates racing.
I got it.
Yeah.
I think I got it.
So he's going to be in the Ford. And since he's now under the Yates Racing umbrella...
Now you're starting to lose me.
Okay. The owners of Yates Racing have decided...
Is that the Yates people?
Yes.
So Yates people still own Yates Racing?
Right.
All right, I got you now.
So the Yates people have decided to take the points from the 38 car, which was...
Gilliland.
Yeah. And apply it to the new Hall of Fame entry with Bobby Labonte. So,
which will be what number?
96.
96.
So it'll be the 96, and they're in the Budweiser Shootout.
I wonder how many people right now just took their mouse, moved it a little over to the right, and said, I'm really getting dizzy.
You're going to have to get used to this because it's going to be part of the dialogue.
Change in the Bud Shootout. Explain that. The Bud Shootout is going to, for starters, the first Saturday of the stock car speed weeks. It'll be 8 days prior to the Daytona 500.
Right.
Which means it'll be on February 7th.
At night.
Take her to an early Valentine's Day again.
That's right.
To the Bud Shootout.
Chocolate and racing.
So what it was going to be, they switched the format already. Now they've switched it again before they've even run one race under the new format. Explain, please.
In years past, the Budweiser Shootout took the previous year's pole winners and put them in a sprint race. Okay, and the whole thing was sponsored by Budweiser, which made it nice and tidy.
Easy.
Right?
Piece of cake.
Okay, well, in 2008, Budweiser dropped the sponsorship of the pole program. It was picked up by Coors.
So Coors.
Now you see there might be a little problem there.
So the people that run the Bud Shootout don't want to fill their field with a bunch of cars that won a Coors Pole Award.
Right. So NASCAR changed the format.
You can't be mixing your beers.
No.
Yeah.
NASCAR changed the format, and now the top 6 cars from each manufacturer in the points last year, your top 6 Chevrolets, your top 6 Dodges.
Boy, I don't like where this one's going already.
So originally it was top 6, and there was 24 cars, and then last week...
Crowded. That's a lot for a shootout.
Last week they amended the rule to include top 7 cars or past champions.
So this is basically the Tony Stewart amendment. Because what this has done is allow Chevrolet to get Tony Stewart into the shootout. Now, you want to hear my little conspiracy theory?
Okay.
Tony Stewart left Tulsa last weekend, where he was out there for the Chili Bowl, the midget sprint car, USAC, one of their biggest shows of the year, if not their biggest show of the year.
Biggest show of the year.
He loves that thing. He left there, gave up a full day where he wanted to be to come here for the Fan Fest that they had this past weekend. Now, granted, he's now an owner, got a new team, and he's got to get as much publicity for that new team as possible.
Right.
But I still don't think they would have pried him away from the Chili Bowl. So I think it might have all come together that, hey, I think we can find a way to get you into the Bud Shootout if you can find a way to pry yourself away from the Chili Bowl. So they put the staff on it.
Yeah.
And they had to come up with, how can we do it? And somebody came up with a genius way of saying, well, each manufacturer gets a wild card.
Right.
Or a past champion or a wild card. And Tony fits into certainly past champion. And if he didn't, they would have had to come up with another way to get him into the shootout. So he just magically, he showed up at Fan Fest and acted all happy about it.
Wow.
And so therefore he's in the Bud Shootout, which is great for him because he's got new sponsors with this new team. It gets him a lot of visibility. And I think it's a pretty good payoff. Now there's my little conspiracy theory. Try to tell me I'm wrong.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Thank you very much.
Tony Stewart, the Stewart Haas Racing, which is a Sprint Cup team.
Right.
They get all their engines, parts, know-how, everything from Hendrick Motorsports.
Right.
Okay, so Rick Hendrick has decided to put Tony Stewart in one of his nationwide cars for the race here.
For the Daytona Speed Weeks. Okay.
Right. So now we're seeing that synergy, that mixing it up.
Recessions make for strange bedfellows, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And with that, we'll call it into this video podcast.
Hey, I'm Godwin Kelly. That there is Ken Willis, and we'll see you at the races.